Marcus adjusted his helmet as he stepped out onto the rocky surface of planet Kalis. The wind whipped around him, carrying dust that stung his skin through the thin layer of protective fabric. He had been sent here as part of a human frontier patrol, tasked with monitoring a newly discovered alien settlement. Humans had been expanding into the galaxy for decades, but Kalis was one of the harshest worlds they had ever tried to colonize. Harsh winds, jagged cliffs, and sudden storms were just the beginning. The planet also held the Valorians, a species humans knew very little about. Their technology was advanced, but their society was tightly bound by rules and traditions humans could barely understand. Marcus had expected suspicion or outright hostility from the Valorians, but what he saw first was unexpected. Small figures moving in perfect formation along the cliffs, their movements precise and deliberate. As he got closer, he realized they were children, alien children. Their skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, almost as if tiny particles of their environment were part of them. They walked without hesitation, their eyes sharp and observant. They didn't run or scream, they simply moved with purpose. Marcus lowered his weapon slowly. He knew that sudden moves could be seen as threatening. These children were alone, and yet they acted with a discipline that seemed almost impossible for beings their age. He crouched behind a rock and watched. One of the children noticed him immediately. Their eyes met, and for a moment Marcus felt the weight of their gaze like they could see his thoughts. Then, without fear, the child gestured for the others to continue and they followed silently. Marcus stayed in place, unsure what to do next. He knew Valorians were protective of their young and wary of humans. Approaching them directly could provoke trouble, but leaving them alone felt wrong. Something about the children's behavior told him they were intelligent, capable, and perhaps in danger. It was then that he saw her. She moved swiftly across the uneven ground, her body low and agile. Marcus's first thought was that she was hunting, but no, her eyes were fixed on the children. She moved like a shadow, careful not to alarm him, yet her presence radiated authority. Marcus instinctively recognized her as their mother. When she noticed him, she stopped abruptly, her eyes locking onto his. Marcus froze, unsure if she would attack, retreat, or speak. To his surprise, she spoke. Her voice was melodic but firm, carrying across the wind without effort. "Human," she said, and there was no accusation in her tone. "I need your help." Marcus hesitated. He had encountered alien species before, and most requests like this carried hidden motives or dangers. "Help?" he asked cautiously. "With what?" She stepped closer, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. Her eyes were soft now, showing exhaustion and worry. "My husband is dead," she said. "I am alone. My children are capable, well-behaved, but I cannot protect them fully while I fulfill my duties among my people. I need someone I can trust to watch over them." Marcus blinked. The request was unusual. He had expected her to demand food, shelter, or perhaps even compliance with some Valorian rule. But trust, protection, and for children no less. I don't know if I can," Marcus admitted, his voice low. "They are aliens. I don't know your ways, and I'm only one man." Her gaze softened. "They are well-behaved. They will follow instruction. If you agree, I will not ask for more than is reasonable. I ask only for their safety. In return, I will provide warmth in your quarters when you rest. I can assist you, teach you, share knowledge." Marcus's mind raced. He knew the implications. Offering companionship and warmth could be seen as a personal arrangement, one that might cause rumors, misunderstandings, or political issues. But he also knew the stakes for the children. They had no one else. He swallowed hard. "All right," he said finally. "I will help them, but we need rules, boundaries, clear instructions." She nodded once sharply. Relief softened her features. "I will respect all rules. I only ask that you consider my request, not as something improper, but as a desperate measure to protect my children." From that moment, Marcus became their guardian. The children observed him closely, as if evaluating whether he could be trusted. Over the next few hours, he led them to a safer area near the settlement. He noticed how each child moved with careful attention, how they helped each other over rocks and through shallow streams. They were disciplined, intelligent, and surprisingly empathetic, anticipating each other's needs without spoken words. As the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs, Marcus set up a small camp. The mother, Lyria, stayed a short distance away, watching quietly. She had told him of her late husband, of the dangers they faced, and of the cultural rules that now forced her to rely on a human. Marcus found it strange how much she trusted him already, yet he could not deny the warmth that trust brought. That night the wind howled and dust stung his face, but Marcus felt a sense of responsibility stronger than anything he had felt before. He understood that the children's survival depended on him, and perhaps, in small ways, the survival of harmony between human and Valorian cultures rested with his choices. Over the following days, he taught the children simple survival skills: how to gather food, purify water, and avoid dangerous terrain. Lyria observed silently, occasionally correcting small mistakes or offering advice. Marcus noticed that her presence, while quiet, brought order and reassurance to the children. They listened to her with respect, even when he gave instructions. One evening, after a long day of lessons and scouting, Marcus returned to his quarters. Lyria waited outside, her posture calm, her gaze steady. She said nothing, only inclined her head as a sign of greeting. Marcus realized that she was trying to establish trust not just with words but with actions. She respected his space, his routines, and his authority, even as she offered her companionship. Marcus sat by the small fire he had managed to keep alive despite the wind. He reflected on the situation: a human soldier entrusted with alien children, guided by their mother, learning a culture far older and stricter than his own. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, yet he felt pride. He could protect these children, perhaps even help them thrive. And yet, part of him wondered about the unusual request the mother had made. He did not understand fully what she meant by "warm your bed," though he assumed it was tied to Valorian customs or some cultural need for companionship and trust. He decided to set aside questions for now. First, the children needed safety, and he would ensure that. Everything else could wait. The days passed in a rhythm of learning, vigilance, and gradual understanding. Marcus grew to respect the intelligence and empathy of the children. They were not just survivors, they were remarkable beings, capable of adapting and learning quickly. And Lyria, despite her grief and the loss of her husband, proved herself wise, patient, and unwavering in her care for her children. One evening, a warning siren echoed through the cliffs. Marcus and the children scrambled to higher ground, followed closely by Lyria. Storm clouds gathered fast, lightning crackling across the sky. Marcus realized this planet did not forgive carelessness, and the lessons he had taught the children would soon be tested. As the storm approached, Lyria turned to him, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "They will be safe," she said. "I trust you. Protect them, human." Marcus nodded, gripping his weapon. He felt the weight of her trust, and it was heavier than any battle he had faced. But he also felt a spark of something new, a connection, not just to these alien children and their mother, but to the idea that humans could make a difference in worlds far beyond their own. And in that moment, as the wind howled and the sky darkened, Marcus knew that nothing, not storms, not cultural barriers, not fear, could shake his resolve to protect the children. He would face whatever Kalis threw at them, because these children were worth it, and their mother's plea had given him a mission far greater than any he had ever known. The storm had passed, leaving the cliffs slick with rain and the air heavy with the scent of wet rock. Marcus led the children and Lyria down from the high ground, carefully navigating treacherous terrain. The children moved quickly, but always under his watchful eye. Their discipline impressed him. They seemed to anticipate his instructions before he spoke, their eyes alert for danger and their movements precise. Once they reached a safer area, Marcus set about checking the children for cuts and bruises. Each one had minor scratches but nothing serious. Lyria knelt beside them, her hands gentle as she examined them, speaking softly in her melodic language. The children listened, responding with subtle nods and murmurs. Marcus didn't understand her words, but he understood the tone. It was calm, reassuring, and filled with care. "You've raised remarkable children," he said finally, looking at her. Lyria's eyes softened. "I had help from the community before before he was taken from us. They learn quickly, but they also need guidance, protection. That is why I asked you, human." Marcus nodded. The trust she placed in him was extraordinary. He had dealt with humans, and he knew trust was earned carefully over time. With Lyria, it felt instantaneous, almost as if her experience and need for survival had compressed years of judgment into moments. He felt the responsibility weigh on him, heavier than any weapon he carried. Over the following days, the rhythm of life settled into a pattern. Marcus taught the children about the human way of survival, how to collect food from the sparse, caelus vegetation, how to purify water, and how to move safely through the cliffs and canyons. The children absorbed everything quickly. One of the older children, a boy named Talon, impressed Marcus with his ability to identify edible plants and anticipate weather changes. Meanwhile, Lyria observed quietly, offering corrections or advice when needed. Her presence was calm, almost like a river flowing gently through the rocky landscape. The children respected her deeply, listening to her without question. Marcus noticed that their trust in him grew steadily, yet it never replaced the bond they shared with their mother. It was a delicate balance, and he respected it. Not everyone in the colony was pleased with the arrangement. Rumors began to spread among the human settlers about Marcus spending time with the alien mother and her children. Some whispered that the Valorians were manipulating him, that he could be endangered or even compromised. Marcus ignored the whispers, focusing instead on the children and their safety. He knew that if he faltered, they would suffer. One evening, as the sky turned a deep violet and the last light of day disappeared behind the cliffs, Marcus and Lyria sat together while the children played nearby. They had found a small sheltered cave, dry and warm compared to the open cliffs. Marcus tended a small fire while Lyria spoke softly in Valorian, her words flowing like a song. The children listened, occasionally laughing or responding, their faces lit with curiosity and joy. Marcus realized how different this experience was from any mission he had undertaken. He had expected danger, suspicion, and perhaps conflict. Instead, he found intelligence, empathy, and cooperation. The children were disciplined yet curious, cautious yet brave. They had a sense of responsibility far beyond their years, and their mother, Lyria, was both a guide and a protector, her wisdom evident in every movement. The next day brought a new challenge. Scouts reported unusual seismic activity near the settlement. The ground shook lightly at first, a tremor that rattled rocks and sent small dust clouds into the air. Marcus knew Caelus was unstable, but he hadn't anticipated a significant quake. He gathered the children and Lyria, leading them to a safer area far from cliffs that could collapse. As they moved, the children followed his instructions perfectly, moving quickly but carefully. Talon helped guide the younger ones, his voice steady even as the tremors grew stronger. Marcus felt a surge of pride. These children, raised in an alien world, were showing qualities he admired most in humans: intelligence, courage, and the ability to act decisively in a crisis. The quake intensified. Rocks tumbled from cliffs, dust filled the air, and the wind picked up again. Marcus directed the group into a narrow canyon that offered shelter. They crouched behind boulders, Lyria holding the youngest child close to her chest. Marcus watched the storm of rock and debris with a tense eye, calculating the safest route if the canyon became dangerous. When the quake finally subsided, they emerged to find the landscape dramatically changed. Large boulders blocked paths they had traveled daily. Small crevices had formed in the cliffs, and vegetation was crushed under debris. Marcus took a deep breath, realizing that survival on Kalis required constant vigilance and adaptability. "This is why I asked for your help," Lyria said quietly, her voice steady despite the tension. "I cannot protect them alone. The world is harsh and my people cannot intervene without risk. You can help them survive, human." Marcus nodded. "I understand, and I will." "They're remarkable, Lyria. Not just well-behaved, they are smart, capable, and brave. You've done an incredible job raising them." Lyria smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting relief and gratitude. She did not speak further, but Marcus sensed her trust deepening. In this moment, the bond between human and alien mother was no longer just a tentative agreement. It was mutual respect forged in the fires of survival. In the following days, Marcus and Lyria worked together to adapt to the changed landscape. They cleared paths, identified safe areas for the children to explore, and reinforced makeshift shelters. The children adapted quickly, showing ingenuity in solving problems. They learned to use small tools Marcus had fashioned, to find hidden water sources, and to signal each other during emergencies. One afternoon, as Marcus taught Talon how to make a simple signal device using rocks and metal, Lyria approached him with a new idea. "Your people think we are different, strange," she said. "But the children show that we are not so different. They think, they care, they learn. Perhaps this can teach both our species something." Marcus considered her words. Humans had expanded across the galaxy, encountering countless species, but it was rare to see such intelligence and discipline in young beings. He realized that the children represented a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of cooperation, learning, and hope. As days passed, Marcus also noticed something else: the way Lyria interacted with him. Her presence was always respectful, never intrusive, yet there was warmth in her gestures. She offered knowledge, guidance, and sometimes simple companionship. Marcus understood that this was part of Velorian culture, a way of forming trust and loyalty, but he also recognized the emotional comfort it provided in the harsh, lonely frontier. One evening, a human scout arrived with news of approaching Velorian officials. They had heard of Lyria's arrangement with Marcus and wanted to investigate. Marcus knew this could complicate everything. The Velorians were strict. Any perceived misstep could bring punishment or disgrace. He also knew that the children's safety could be at risk if officials disapproved. When the officials arrived, Marcus stood tall. Lyria spoke first, explaining calmly and clearly that the arrangement was temporary, designed to ensure the children's safety while respecting Velorian law. The officials listened, their expressions unreadable. Marcus watched carefully, ready to intervene if necessary. After a tense moment, one of the officials nodded slightly. "You have shown care and prudence," the elder said. "The children are safe, and their well-being is evident. We will not intervene further, but you must continue to respect Velorian law and maintain order." Relief washed over Marcus. The officials left, satisfied, and the children returned to their routines. Marcus realized that this experience was teaching him something important, not just survival, but diplomacy, patience, and the value of trust across species. As night fell, the children slept peacefully, exhausted from the day's activities. Lyria remained nearby, her gaze soft but watchful. Marcus sat by the fire, reflecting on the events. He thought about how far he had come since first arriving on Kalis. He had gone from a soldier following orders to a guardian, a teacher, and a bridge between two worlds. He also thought about the future. The challenges were far from over. Kalis was unpredictable, and the colony still faced threats from the environment and perhaps other alien species. But he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not just protecting children. He was helping forge a future where humans and Valorians could coexist, learn from one another, and thrive together. In that moment, Marcus understood the true meaning of the mother's plea. It was not merely a request for protection or companionship. It was a call for partnership, trust, and shared responsibility. And he was ready to answer that call, no matter what lay ahead. The days after the earthquake had settled into a rhythm, but Marcus knew life on Kalis could change in an instant. He and Lyria continued teaching the children survival skills, and the children continued to impress him with their intelligence, discipline, and empathy. Talon, the oldest, often took the lead, guiding the younger ones while Marcus and Lyria observed. It was remarkable to see such cohesion among young beings, and Marcus realized the children were more than just survivors. They were a bridge between human and Valorian worlds. One morning, scouts reported unusual activity at the edges of the settlement. Another alien species, previously unknown to humans, was approaching. Marcus immediately began preparations. He instructed the children to gather supplies, identify safe zones, and create signals in case they needed to communicate quickly. Lyria worked closely with him, offering insights into alien behavior, and the children absorbed every lesson with sharp attention. When the newcomers arrived, they were cautious and curious, sending small scouting parties rather than full attacks. Marcus approached them openly, showing that humans meant no harm. Lyria translated what little she could, and the children observed quietly, ready to respond if danger arose. The encounter was tense but peaceful, and Marcus realized how important their preparation and trust had been. Without the combined efforts of himself, Lyria, and the children, the outcome could have been disaster. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Lyria worked to integrate the settlement more fully. The human colonists began to appreciate the value of the Valorian children, noting their intelligence and empathy. The children helped solve problems, mediate disputes, and anticipate dangers that humans might have overlooked. Marcus often found himself marveling at their ability to understand human emotions and intentions so quickly. One afternoon, Lyria brought Marcus to a quiet plateau overlooking the cliffs. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep reds and golds. She spoke softly in the Valorian language, but he could sense the meaning. She was expressing gratitude, respect, and trust. Marcus nodded, understanding her entirely without translation. "You have done more than protect them," she said in Haloran, the language of humans. "You have guided them, taught them, and shown them that trust can cross worlds. For that, I am grateful." Marcus felt a warmth he had not experienced before. The bond he shared with Lyria was not just duty. It was respect, admiration, and a quiet friendship built on shared challenges. He realized that this was what humans could offer: courage, intelligence, and empathy that could change worlds. Then came the most critical challenge yet. A violent storm, far larger than any before, approached Kalis. Winds howled at impossible speeds, lightning struck the cliffs, and the sky turned dark. Marcus immediately organized the settlement, instructing humans and Valorians alike to move to the safest zones. The children responded quickly, helping the younger ones, signaling to each other and following every instruction without hesitation. Marcus and Lyria moved together, coordinating rescue efforts. They guided groups of humans and Valorians to shelters, cleared blocked paths, and reassured frightened settlers. At one point, a large boulder threatened to crush a group of children, but Talon and one of the younger children pushed it aside using a lever system Marcus had taught them. Marcus felt pride swell within him. These children were capable of heroism, even at such a young age. After the storm passed, the settlement was battered but intact. Marcus inspected the area, checking on everyone, while Lyria tended to the children and other Valorians. The human colonists gathered, visibly impressed by the coordination and bravery displayed by Marcus, Lyria, and the children. Even the elders of the Valorians approached, nodding in approval. "They have grown under your guidance," one elder said to Marcus. "Your influence has shaped them well. They are strong, wise, and disciplined. Your people are remarkable." Marcus felt a surge of pride and humility. Humans were often judged for their impulsiveness or recklessness, yet here he had demonstrated the best of humanity: courage, adaptability, and the ability to foster growth in others. He looked at Lyria, who gave him a small, approving smile. In the days that followed, life gradually returned to a cautious normal. The settlement repaired shelters, restocked supplies, and continued training for survival. Marcus continued his role as protector and teacher, and the children flourished under his guidance and their mother's care. One evening, as Marcus sat outside near a fire, Lyria approached quietly. She did not speak at first, simply sitting beside him. The children were asleep nearby, exhausted but content. Finally, she spoke. "You have done more than protect my children," she said. "You have become part of our lives, part of their growth, and part of our trust. We owe you more than words can express." Marcus looked at her, feeling the depth of her sincerity. He nodded slowly. "It has been an honor," he said. "Not just for me, but for all of us. These children, they are extraordinary. You are extraordinary." Lyria smiled faintly, then turned her gaze to the sleeping children. Marcus followed her gaze. He thought about how far they had come, from a desperate plea to survival, from fear to trust, from strangers to a united group capable of facing anything Kalis could throw at them. The human colonists had begun to see the value in cooperation with the Valorians. Marcus realized that this small settlement could become an example of what humans and aliens could achieve together. Intelligence, courage, empathy, and respect for others, qualities humans often took pride in, had bridged the gap between worlds. In the quiet night, Marcus reflected on the journey. The plea of a desperate alien mother had led him to something greater than a mission or a duty. It had led him to witness the potential for understanding across species, the power of trust, and the extraordinary nature of beings, both human and alien, when they worked together. Lyria rested her hand briefly on his shoulder, a silent gesture of thanks and trust. Marcus returned the gesture, understanding its weight. It was a bond forged not through orders or obligation, but through shared struggle, mutual respect, and care for those who could not protect themselves alone. The children stirred, sensing the comfort and safety of the moment. Marcus smiled at them, feeling proud of their growth, their courage, and the harmony they now represented. Kalis remained a harsh world, unpredictable and dangerous, but within this small settlement, humans and Valorians had created something extraordinary, a place where trust, intelligence, and empathy thrived. As dawn approached, painting the cliffs with golden light, Marcus looked to the horizon. There would be more storms, more challenges, and perhaps more unknown species to encounter, but he knew that together they could face anything. The children's discipline, intelligence, and compassion, guided by their mother and nurtured by human courage and insight, were proof that cooperation could overcome even the harshest conditions. And for Marcus, the greatest lesson of all was clear. Humanity had the power not just to survive in the galaxy, but to inspire, to guide, and to elevate others. The mother's plea had begun as a request for protection, but it had become something far more significant, a shared journey of trust, growth, and hope for the future. As the sun rose fully, casting light over the settlement, Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He had answered the call of an alien mother, protected her extraordinary children, and learned the strength of his own people in the process. Kalis was still wild, still dangerous, but within its cliffs and valleys, a new story had begun, a story of unity, respect, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The children laughed as they played in the morning light. Lyria watched them with quiet pride. Marcus joined them, feeling their energy, their curiosity, and their brilliance. Together, they represented something bigger than themselves, a bridge between species, a testament to courage and intelligence, and the undeniable truth that humans could make a difference in the galaxy. And in that moment, Marcus knew with certainty that the mother's plea had been the beginning of something remarkable. It had been a plea for protection, but it had grown into a story of hope, trust, and a future where humans and aliens could not only survive together, but thrive together.